If you've ever pulled into a quiet gas station or a lonely rest stop at night, you already know the feeling. The lights buzzing overhead, the cold air that suddenly feels way too still, and that sense that someone might be watching from the dark, just outside the glow. Tonight, you're going to hear 3 real pit stop horror stories that will change the way you travel forever. And whatever you do, don't listen to this alone. I've always believed that fear is something you can reason your way out of that. If you stare long enough into the dark, eventually your brain will be forced to admit there's nothing there. I held on to that belief for most of my adult life, through breakups, cross-country moves, and some long nights on empty highways. But the night I pulled into the Chevron off Highway 95 outside Fallon, Nevada, that belief quietly, permanently died. I was in the middle of a long, stupid drive that I had no real reason to be on. 3 days earlier, my younger brother, Dylan, had relapsed again. Meth, always meth. I'd gotten the call from our mom, her voice raw and cracking, telling me he'd disappeared from his halfway house near Reno. Something in me snapped then. A mix of anger and guilt, and a tired sense of responsibility I thought I'd buried years ago. Without thinking, I got in my car and started driving from Phoenix, telling myself I had to find him before he did something irreversible. I'd barely slept. I'd been on the road for 10 hours that day alone, most of it through dead desert towns where even the air seemed abandoned. By the time I saw the glowing Chevron sign shimmering through heat-warped darkness, it felt like a lighthouse in a storm. I pulled in at 1:47 a.m. according to my dashboard clock. The lot was mostly empty, except for a beat-up white pickup parked crooked beside Pump 6. No driver, no movement inside. I didn't think much of it then. People leave their trucks running while they piss, or grab snacks, or pass out for 20 minutes before continuing on. But when I stepped out of my car, the first hook dug in. The air didn't feel right. It wasn't the temperature, or the wind, or the usual desert stillness. It was the silence, a pressed down, heavy quiet that felt intentional. Like the world around the gas station had muted itself to listen. I shook it off and headed for the store. The interior lights buzzed faintly, that sickly fluorescent hum that makes everything look like a crime scene. The aisles were empty. No music, no other customers. And behind the counter stood a young man, maybe mid-20s, thin, with dark circles under his eyes that made him look almost bruised. When I walked in, he flinched. Not subtly, not like a customer startled him, more like someone stepping back from the edge of a cliff. Still, he tried to cover it with a tight smile. "Hey," he said, voice hoarse. "Long night? Long week," I said. "You open late?" 24 hours. His eyes flicked past me toward the door, then to the windows, then back to me. A nervous tick, but too rapid, too patterned, like he was checking something. Or someone. I grabbed a bottle of water, an energy drink, and a pack of jerky. Basic road survival stuff. When I returned to the counter, he scanned the items with trembling hands. Not cold, trembling. "Hook number 2. You driving alone?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah." "Where you headed?" "Reno," I said, trying to find my brother. "Missing?" "Sort of." He nodded slowly, pressing his lips together like he wanted to say more, but couldn't. When he handed me the receipt, our fingers brushed. His skin was ice cold. Not room temperature. Cold, refrigerated cold. I remember thinking maybe he'd been standing near some industrial freezer, but there was no frost on his clothes, no reason for that kind of chill. Then he leaned forward just slightly, not enough to make it obvious, but enough that I felt the tension coil in the air between us. "Before you go," he murmured, "can I ask you something weird?" "Sure." "When you pulled in, did you see anyone near your car?" The question caught me so off guard that for a second I just stared at him. "No," I said slowly. "Why?" Again, that lip press, that swallowed back thought. "Because there's been... Look, never mind." He shook his head, glanced at the door again, then leaned forward another inch. "Just don't leave yet." "What do you mean?" His jaw clenched. I could see the tendons in his neck standing out like wires. "Please, just stay inside for a minute." I tried to laugh it off. "Dude, are you okay?" "No," he whispered. "Someone's out there. He's been coming around every night this week. I thought he left, but when you pulled in..." He stopped abruptly. His gaze snapped toward the far left window. I followed it. Nothing there. Just darkness, gas pumps, and the empty desert stretching out beyond the lot. But the clerk's breathing had changed fast, shallow, like prey trying not to make sound. "You didn't see him," he whispered, "but he saw you." My scalp prickled. Every rational thought in me said the guy was sleep-deprived, paranoid, maybe high. Every irrational instinct, the one wired deep under all logic, said something else. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "What exactly did you see out there?" "I can't explain it," he said. "But I know what it looks like when a person is standing in the dark. And that thing isn't standing like a person." I felt my stomach drop in a slow, heavy twist. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, he reached under the counter and pulled out a small flashlight. Not the cheap plastic kind, but a heavy-duty tactical one. He clicked it on and off once, testing it, then nodded toward the window. "I'll show you," he whispered, "but stay behind me." We stepped out onto the sidewalk in front of the store. The sound of the door shutting behind us seemed to echo too long, like the night stretched it out. The air smelled like hot asphalt and metal. The clerk swept the flashlight across the lot. Pumps, concrete, my car, the white pickup still running, still empty. Nothing unusual. "It was by pump 4, he said, "standing wrong." "Standing wrong how?" "Like," he exhaled shakily, "like it wasn't meant to be upright. Like its joints were remembering the shape slowly." I didn't know what to say to that. He kept scanning the darkness, the beam jittering slightly with his shaking hands. The wind picked up a low, slow sigh across the highway, and something about it made me think of breath on the back of your neck. Then the light passed over the pickup and stopped. The clerk froze. My pulse thudded painfully. "Do you see that?" he whispered. I squinted. At first, I saw nothing but the truck's open driver door and the shadow beneath it. Then the shadow moved. Not a lot. Not dramatically. Just a subtle shift, like something adjusting its weight. "Someone's under the truck," I said, relieved to have a rational explanation. "It's just a guy." "No," the clerk whispered. "Watch." The shadow didn't crawl or shuffle. It uncoiled, silently, fluidly, like fabric unfolding in reverse. No human moves like that, not without sound, not without struggle. The clerk sucked in a sharp breath and stepped backward toward the door. "Inside," he hissed. "Now." The shape beneath the truck, elongated thin, jointed wrong. like it had too many angles and not enough bone. It slipped fully onto the pavement without ever lifting its torso, as if its limbs were pulling it, like a spider dragging a hollow body. It stopped halfway out, head, or what I assumed was a head, angled toward us. Even from across the lot, I felt seen, not watched, seen. Inside, the clerk repeated, voice cracking. But my legs wouldn't move. Something ancient in me, some instinct older than language, rooted me to the ground. The creature or man or whatever it was shifted again, not toward us, under the next car, then the next. Each movement impossibly silent, impossibly fast when the light flicked off it for even a second. It was getting closer without ever approaching directly, like it was learning the distance between cars. Calculating the path, the clerk grabbed my arm. Hard, the grip snapped me out of my paralysis. We sprinted inside. He locked the door. Immediately, the store felt too bright, too exposed. The clerk doubled over, hands on his knees, breathing like he'd outrun a fire. It doesn't like the lights, he said, but it learns. Every night it gets closer. Have you called the police? I asked. Twice, he said. They didn't see anything. They think I'm hallucinating, or tired, or messing with them. What about cameras? It doesn't show up. Just disturbances, flickers. He swallowed hard, shadows that don't match anything. My heart hammered against my ribs. So what does it want? I don't know. But every night, it chooses someone. He looked at me then, and I saw genuine fear. Not paranoia, not delusion, but raw, human terror. And I think it chose you. Something rattled against the glass door. Not hard, not like a bang. Like fingertips brushing across it. Testing. The clerk and I both turned slowly. At first, there was nothing. Then I saw it. The smallest indentation in the reflection. A shape that didn't belong to either of us. Too low to be a face. Too high to be a hand. The clerk grabbed my arm again. Don't move, he whispered. My breath felt stuck in my throat. The indentation drifted to the left. Then higher, then lower again, like it was trying to understand the barrier, trying to find an opening, trying to memorize what we looked like through the glass. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "Why me?" The clerk's voice was barely audible. Because it followed you in. The lights above aisle 3 flickered. A slow, deliberate pulse. Then the ones above the freezer section. Then the ones above us. One by one. Like a pattern. A sequence. A countdown. Get to the back, the clerk hissed. Now, there's a storage room. No windows. We ran. The lights strobed wildly, plunging the store into jagged flashes of dark and pale. In one of the dark flashes, I swear I heard something dragging along the floor. When we reached the storage room, the clerk slammed the door and locked it. I pressed my ear to the metal. At first, nothing. Then, soft, careful footsteps. Not walking, skimming, dragging, relearning how to be upright. The clerk pulled out his phone. No signal. Mine had died hours earlier. How does it get in? I whispered. It doesn't need doors, he whispered back. It just needs darkness. The footsteps stopped outside the storage room. My skin crawled. My vision tunneled. Then something slid under the door, just a crease of blackness, too dark, too sharp, like a shadow with weight. The clerk lunged forward and stomped on it. The floor shook. Something on the other side hissed, not human, not animal. A scraping sound like flesh on tile echoed through the store. Then, silence. Pure, suffocating silence. We waited. 10 minutes, 20. Eventually, the lights outside the door stopped flickering. The clerk opened it slowly. The store was untouched. No sign of anything. The front door was still locked. The parking lot empty, except for my car, and the white truck gone. No tire marks, no engine noise, just gone. "You need to leave," the clerk whispered. "Now, before it figures out another way in. What about you?" He gave a hollow, exhausted laugh. "It doesn't want me. It never did." I stepped out into the night. The air was still heavy, still listening. As I reached my car, I checked the back seat 3 times. The clerk stayed inside, watching me through the glass. When I finally pulled away, I saw him raise a hand, half wave, half warning. I didn't stop driving until sunrise. I didn't find my brother. But sometimes, when I'm on a highway late at night, a stretch of road will go silent, heavy. Listening, and I swear I can hear something move under the car behind me, testing the distance, relearning the shape of motion, deciding whether tonight, finally, is the night it chooses me again. I'm not someone who scares easily. I work long, lonely hours as a traveling field technician for a telecom company, driving across the western states to fix towers in the middle of nowhere. Nights on empty highways are part of the job, and I've always found them calming, like the world goes quiet just for me. But one night, last winter, outside the tiny Nevada town of Hawthorne, I learned that some silences aren't peaceful. Some are warnings you only understand too late. I had been heading north on US 95 after a brutal week. My dad had been admitted to a hospital in Boise with congestive heart failure. And even though I took time off to see him, I left feeling like I was abandoning him. He told me to go, told me he didn't want me hovering, but guilt has a way of clinging to you, turning everything else gray. I was exhausted, emotionally more than physically, and planned to stop for an hour of sleep at a rest area I'd used before, the 110 miles outside Hawthorne, surrounded by nothing but open desert and black mountains. I pulled in around 12:30 a.m. The lot was empty, except for an old RV parked near the exit. Its windows were dark, and I assumed whoever owned it was asleep. I backed into a space facing the highway, so headlights wouldn't shine directly at me. The cold desert air felt sharp and clean as I stepped out to stretch. I could smell sagebrush, dust, and that faint metallic scent of winter. The silence was thick, but not unusual, just the vast kind you get when miles of desert surround you. Still, something felt off. A faint vibration through the ground, maybe, like distant thunder or heavy machinery. I chalked it up to highway traffic I couldn't hear. I settled into the driver's seat, locked the doors out of habit, reclined slightly, and closed my eyes. Maybe 5 minutes passed before I heard it. The deep, slow rumble of a diesel engine. It grew louder, closer, until it felt like the sound was inside my chest. I sat up just as a massive semi-truck rolled into the rest area. No company logo, just matte black paint that swallowed the dim lights. It didn't pull into a space. Instead, it circled the lot once slowly, like a predator checking its perimeter. Then, it stopped directly behind my car. Not the next space, not the row behind. Directly behind me, close enough that if I opened my trunk, it would hit the truck's grill. The engine stayed running, a low idle that felt more like breathing. I waited for the driver to step out. Nobody did. 5 minutes, 10. The steady vibration of the diesel engine pressed against my spine, as if something huge and patient was studying me. I told myself it was nothing. Truckers park weird all the time. Maybe the driver wanted to sleep where it was darkest. Maybe he didn't see me, but the rest area was nearly empty. He had dozens of open spaces. Why choose mine? I checked my mirrors. The truck's headlights were off, but the cabin was too dark to see inside. No movement, no silhouette, just endless black. I considered driving off, but something about starting my engine felt like it would trigger a reaction like breaking camouflage in front of a predator. So I waited. I tried not to look at the mirrors, but my eyes kept drifting up. The truck still hadn't moved. The engine still rumbled. And then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The RV near the exit was gone. I hadn't heard it start, hadn't heard it move. It had simply vanished. The only sound was the truck behind me, idling like a giant clearing its throat. A hook of dread settled deep in my gut. Something was wrong. I grabbed my phone, no signal. Not one bar. That rest area normally had at least a weak connection, but now my phone showed nothing. I opened my Maps app and watched the little blue dot flicker, then drift off the road entirely, like it didn't know where I was. My hands were starting to shake. Okay, I whispered to myself. Just leave. Just drive. The moment I turned the key in the ignition, the truck behind me did something subtle, but unmistakably deliberate. Its engine revved slow and deep just once. Not aggressive. Not like a warning. More like acknowledgement. Like it had been waiting for me to move. My breath froze in my chest. The instinct to flee was overwhelming. But so was the gut-level certainty that if I pulled forward, the truck would follow. Or block me. Or worse. My headlights illuminated nothing but the empty lot and the desert beyond. I put the car in drive, hands sweating on the wheel, and slowly rolled forward. The truck didn't move. I edged toward the exit. Still nothing. Relief trickled in. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the driver was just sleeping in the cab. Then, as I passed the truck's front end, my headlights brushed across it and caught a glimpse of something that made me slam my foot on the brake. There were handprints on the grill. Not dusty smudges. Not old stains. Fresh, dark, wet handprints. Too many. Some small, some large, layered over each other like whoever made them had been trying to climb onto the truck or off it. My mouth went dry. I eased back onto the gas and rolled toward the exit. But before I reached it, the truck's headlights snapped on. High beams. Blinding white light that swallowed my rear-view mirror. My heart dropped into my stomach. The truck's engine roared to life loud enough to vibrate through the steering wheel. Then it started moving. Slow at first, creeping, matching my pace. I accelerated. It accelerated. The exit ramp felt a mile away. The truck closed the distance until its headlights filled my entire back window. I turned onto the highway, tires skidding on the cold asphalt. The truck followed. I pushed my car to 70. The truck kept up, 80. It stayed inches from my bumper. The desert blurred past. The road felt endless. The truck's engine bellowed behind me like some massive animal hungry for the kill. I dialed 911, still no signal, not even a flicker. Then, without warning, the truck pulled into the left lane. For a second, I thought it meant to pass me, but it didn't. It drove parallel, staying perfectly aligned with my car. Its cab loomed beside me, impossibly tall, impossibly dark. I forced myself to glance over. The driver's window was black, not tinted. Black, like there was no glass, no interior, just void. Then something moved in that void. Not a figure, not a face, a shifting, a ripple, like something enormous was leaning closer. I floored the accelerator. My little sedan screamed in protest, but surged forward. The truck fell behind slowly at first, then faster, until its headlights disappeared entirely. I didn't stop driving for almost 30 minutes, until I reached the glowing gas stations of Fallon. I pulled into a brightly lit lot, parked in front of a family inside a minivan, and sat shaking with my hands locked on the wheel. My phone buzzed suddenly. 3 missed calls from my sister. Signal back, reality back, safety, or something like it back. I went inside, bought a coffee I didn't drink, and waited a full hour before returning to the highway. The drive to Boise the next morning felt normal, sunny, harmless. For a while, I convinced myself I'd imagined parts of it. That stress and exhaustion twisted something ordinary into something sinister. But that illusion shattered 3 days later. My dad had stabilized. I stepped outside the hospital in the early morning to get fresh air. The parking lot was quiet, frosty. My breath pooled in front of me. And across the street, parked perfectly still in the far corner of a grocery store lot, was a semi-truck. Matte black, no logo, no lights, just sitting there, watching. I stared at it for a long time, adrenaline flooding my body. Then a delivery truck pulled past, blocking my view for maybe 2 seconds. When it cleared, the black semi was gone. No engine sound, no tire marks in the frost. Nothing. Like it had never been there at all. Since then, I've seen it 3 more times. Always far away, always still, always watching. I don't know if it's a person or something else wearing the shape of one. I don't know why it chose me. But now, whenever I drive long distances alone at night, I check my mirrors constantly, because sometimes, just for a second, I see a pair of high beams behind me too bright, too close before they vanish, as if swallowed by the dark. And every time, I wonder how long I have before the truck stops following and starts catching up. I should start by saying this. I've always hated parking garages, the echoing footsteps, the stale chemical smell, the way every shadow looks like it's just waiting for you to walk a little too close. There's something about them that makes me feel watched. So when all this happened in the downtown Spokane, Washington Medical District garage, I can't say I was completely surprised that something felt wrong from the start. But what I didn't expect, what I still can't fully explain, is the moment I realized the darkness wasn't empty, and that someone, or something, was moving in it. I was visiting Spokane to see my sister, who'd just had minor surgery. The hospital garage was packed during the day, so I parked on the lowest level, level C, the one that always feels half forgotten. Even as I stepped out of my car earlier that afternoon, I felt that prickling sensation along my spine, like my instincts were tugging at me, whispering something I couldn't quite hear yet. I brushed it off. Long day, nerves, whatever. But that same sensation is the reason I survived that night. I didn't realize it until later. When visiting hours ended around 9 p.m., I stayed a little longer. My sister was groggy, drifting in and out of sleep, and I didn't want to leave until she seemed settled. By the time I finally stepped out of the hospital's sliding doors, the air outside had turned cold enough to sting. I pulled my jacket tighter and crossed the street toward the garage. The automatic lights flickered on overhead, one by one, as I descended the concrete ramp to level C. And that's when I heard it. A scraping sound. Slow, inconsistent, metal brushing concrete. Then silence, then another scrape. It was faint, like it came from far back in the maze of parked cars. I stopped walking. Something in me tightened. That same instinct again, but sharper this time. I told myself it was probably just a shopping cart, someone abandoned, or maybe the wind pushing something around. Spokane gets those sudden night gusts that can rattle aluminum signs and slam doors if you're not careful. But this sound wasn't chaotic, it had a rhythm, a deliberate rhythm. I hesitated before continuing, and that pause gave me the first hook in my gut that something was wrong. The molecules in the air felt heavier, like the concrete walls had absorbed a warning I hadn't yet picked up on. I reached the bottom of the ramp, and the overhead lights hummed softly. Most cars were gone now. Only a few remained, scattered across the level, mine included, all the way at the end near the elevator shaft. I took a step forward, then stopped again when I heard movement, quick, soft, like fabric brushing the floor. This time I knew it wasn't the wind. The sound was low to the ground. I don't know why, but the thought that came to my mind wasn't someone walking, it was someone crawling. I tried to tell myself that was ridiculous, but every nerve in my body had sharpened. I forced myself to walk, slower now, scanning between the rows of cars. My footsteps echoed off the walls, bouncing back at me like someone else was walking right behind me. And then I saw it, just a flash at first. Something dark sliding under a car about halfway down the row, too fast to see clearly, too slow to be an animal. My lungs tightened instantly. I froze and squinted, trying to see movement under the vehicle. Nothing. No shadow, no silhouette, no second scrape. Just silence, stretching across the concrete floor like a sheet being pulled tight. The hook inside me pulled deeper. Every instinct said, turn around, go back, ask security to walk you down. But part of me, the logical part, insisted I was imagining things. Maybe it was just someone who dropped their keys or phone. Maybe a homeless person looking for a warm place to sleep. Spokane has plenty of those. Maybe I'd spooked them as much as they'd spooked me. I swallowed hard and walked again, this time gripping my keys between my fingers, the way my dad taught me years ago. A makeshift weapon, not much, but something. When I neared the spot where I'd seen movement, I slowed to a crawl. I looked under the car, nothing, just emptiness. But the concrete was dusty, and I noticed a long streak where dust had been smeared aside, like something or someone had been dragging themselves forward. The streak led deeper between the cars, toward the far end of the garage. Toward where my car was, I felt my heart begin to pound, so violently I could hear the blood in my ears. Still, I forced myself to keep moving. I told myself that if someone really was down here crawling around, I needed to get inside my car, lock the doors, and get out as fast as possible. I clicked my car remote from a distance. The headlights flashed twice, lighting up the surrounding area for a split second. That's when I saw him. At least, I think it was a him, a human shape, flat against the ground, sticking out from beneath the SUV parked next to my car. I didn't see his face, just his legs from the knees down. bare legs, skin pale as candle wax, feet dirty, like he had crawled through mud or worse. Then, slowly, those legs retracted under the SUV, disappearing completely. My breath caught in my throat. My body wanted to run, but my legs locked. I stood rooted to the concrete, like my brain couldn't process the command to move. The hook wasn't just present now, it stabbed me repeatedly, insisting something was terribly wrong. The air suddenly felt colder, like all the warmth had been sucked out of the garage. After several seconds, the SUV next to my car rocked gently, as if something inside or beneath it had pushed against the frame. Once, twice, very softly. I didn't think, I just acted. Without letting myself hesitate, I bolted toward the driver's side door of my car, yanked it open, jumped inside, and slammed it shut. My hands shook so badly that I fumbled the keys twice before getting the engine going. The headlights flooded the concrete floor ahead of me, and that's when I saw him clearly for the first time. A face, pale, too pale, flattened against the floor beneath the SUV, positioned just at the edge of the shadows. Eyes open wide, reflecting the light unnaturally. His mouth stretched in a way that didn't look right, too long, too strained, like it was forced into a grin he wasn't controlling. His head was tilted upward, staring directly at me from only a foot above the ground. And then he started crawling toward my car. Fast. I threw the car into reverse so hard the gearshift clicked. My tires squealed as I backed up, but his body moved even faster. His elbows jerked outward with each pull, and his legs dragged behind him like they were useless. His fingers clawed into the concrete, scraping loudly. He wasn't crawling like a normal person, he was skittering, like a spider whose joints bent wrong. As he closed the distance between us, I slammed the gear into drive and floored it. My car lurched forward, engine roaring, as I shot toward the exit ramp. In my rearview mirror, I saw him stop moving, not because he chose to, but because the headlights caught him full on. He recoiled like the brightness burned him. He twisted his head sideways, impossibly far, until it cracked loudly. Then he scurried backward under another car with unnatural speed, disappearing into the shadows as if he'd never been there. I didn't breathe until I cleared the ramp and burst into the cold night air. Even then, my chest felt tight, like something was still pressing on it. I didn't look back. I drove straight to my hotel, locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat awake until sunrise with every light on. The next morning, I went to the hospital but parked on the street. When I asked a nurse casually whether anyone had reported something strange in the garage, she paused and gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I was asking but also didn't want to talk about it. Finally, she said, "Security gets reports, usually at night, mostly on the lower levels. Maintenance says it's just shadows and nerves. People see things when they're tired. Has anyone ever been found down there?" I asked. She hesitated again, then shook her head slowly. "Not alive." I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't want to know. My sister was released that afternoon, and I left Spokane the same day. But every time since then, every single time I enter a parking garage, I still feel that hook tug in my gut, that instinct warning me to stay alert. Because now, I know the darkness isn't always empty. And sometimes, the thing watching you isn't standing at all. Sometimes it's waiting on the ground, so low you won't notice it until it's already crawling toward you. If you made it this far, you're probably looking over your shoulder right now. These pit stop stories never really leave you. They stick with you the next time you pull in for gas, or park under those dim yellow lights alone. If you want more real encounters like these, don't forget to subscribe and keep your notifications on. I upload nightly, and the next story might be even closer to home than you think.